I stood at the very back of St. Paul's Cathedral, my hands trembling slightly as I breathed in the heavy scent of white lilies that filled the magnificent nave. It was the 12th of May, a surprisingly sunny Saturday for London, and outside, the bells of the city churches were ringing. My younger sister, Emma, was about to marry my ex-husband, William, in just a few minutes. The irony of this situation was so bitter, I could have laughed. But I wasn't there to laugh. I was there to tell the truth. 3 years earlier, I could never have imagined finding myself in this position. William and I had been married for 7 years. We'd met at Oxford, both studying English literature, falling in love over cups of tea in the Bodleian Library, and punting on the Cherwell. Our wedding had been a proper English affair right here in St. Paul's, with Emma as my maid of honor, glowing in her dusty pink dress, crying happy tears during my vows. The divorce came 18 months later. William claimed he needed space, said our marriage had become stifling, that he'd lost himself in the routine of it all. I accepted it, though it shattered my heart. What I didn't know was that he'd been having an affair with Emma for 3 months already. My own sister, my blood, the girl I'd defended from school bullies in Hampstead, with whom I'd shared midnight secrets in our childhood home in Chelsea. I discovered their betrayal quite by accident, 6 months after the divorce. Olivia, my best friend since our days at St. Paul's Girls' School, had seen them kissing on Primrose Hill, embracing like something out of a Richard Curtis film. She'd taken a photograph, not out of malice, but out of pure shock. When she showed it to me over afternoon tea at Fortnum and Mason, my Earl Grey went cold as I stared at the image, hoping my eyes were deceiving me. The confrontation with Emma was devastating. We were in our parents' drawing room in Chelsea, the same room where we'd played dress-up as children. She wept, fell to her knees on the Persian rug, said she hadn't meant to fall for him, that one simply can't help whom one loves. Love knows no boundaries, she kept saying. But I knew boundaries, the boundary between sisterly love and betrayal, the boundary between trust and treachery. She'd crossed them all. My parents were torn apart. Mummy tried to mediate, organized tense Sunday roasts in the dining room where the portraits of our ancestors seemed to judge us all. Daddy retreated to his study, nursing his whiskey and staring out at the garden where Emma and I had played croquet as girls. The old oak tree still stood there, the swing still hanging from its lowest branch. I threw myself into my work at the publishing house in Bloomsbury. 12-hour days, working weekends, anything to avoid thinking. James, my colleague, tried to cheer me up, invited me to the theater, to exhibitions at the Tate, but I declined everything. I wasn't ready to live again. Then the wedding invitation arrived. Cream card, gold embossing, a photograph of them at Kew Gardens. Emma delivered it personally, climbed the 4 flights to my flat in Notting Hill. "Please come," she'd begged, her voice breaking. "You're my sister. I need you there." I took the invitation, closed the door without a word. The invitation sat on my kitchen table for weeks. Each morning with my coffee, I'd stare at it. Each evening when I returned from work. It became a silent companion to my loneliness. Olivia advised me not to go. My therapist, Dr. Pemberton on Harley Street, said I should do what felt right. But what felt right in this chaos? A fortnight before the wedding, I had a dream. Emma and I were children again, playing hide and seek in our grandparents' cottage in the Cotswolds. She'd hide behind the grandfather clock. I'd always find her. But in this dream, I couldn't find her. I searched and searched, called her name through the rose garden, but she'd vanished. I woke up crying. The next day, Mummy rang. Emma had bought her wedding dress from the same boutique on Bond Street where I'd bought mine. She'd even wear grandmother's pearl necklace, the one from Delhi during the Raj. It was as though she wasn't just taking my husband, but stealing my memories too. Mummy begged me to come, for the family's reputation. I agreed, already knowing I wouldn't be a silent observer. The days before the wedding, I prepared, not for the celebration, but for my performance. I knew exactly what I'd say, when I'd say it. I practiced before my bedroom mirror until every word was perfect. Olivia tried to talk me out of it, said I'd regret it. But regret was a luxury I could no longer afford. The morning of the wedding, I woke before dawn. London was still sleeping, only the pigeons cooing on my windowsill. I put on my black Burberry dress, bought specifically for the occasion. Black to a wedding, a quiet protest. I left my hair down, wore the Joe Malone perfume William had given me for our 5th anniversary. Every detail was deliberate. The taxi ride to St. Paul's took 20 minutes. I had the driver drop me at Paternoster Square, needed time to gather myself. The city was quiet on a Saturday, just tourists and the odd jogger. No one noticed the woman in black walking slowly towards the cathedral. Each step strengthened my resolve. St. Paul's was decorated magnificently, white roses and baby's breath everywhere, candles casting warm light on Christopher Wren's Baroque masterpiece. Guests were arriving slowly. I recognized many faces. Mutual friends forced to choose sides. Most avoided my gaze, others nodded awkwardly. Aunt Victoria embraced me tightly, whispered that she understood completely. I sat in the back row, right on the aisle. From here, I could see everything whilst remaining somewhat invisible. The organ began playing Pachelbel's Canon, the same piece from my wedding. My fists clenched involuntarily. William entered, looking dashing in his morning coat. His best man, his brother Thomas, whom I'd always liked, stood beside him. William's eyes swept the cathedral, landed on me briefly. Surprise, then discomfort crossed his face. He hadn't expected me to come. The music swelled. Everyone stood. Emma appeared at the entrance on Daddy's arm. She looked breathtaking, I had to admit. The dress was nearly identical to mine had been, ivory silk with Chantilly lace, a cathedral-length train. Daddy looked older, tired. These past 2 years had aged him considerably. As she walked down the aisle, our eyes met. In hers, I saw nervousness, guilt, but also hope. Hope that this day might mark a fresh start. She smiled tentatively. I didn't return it. Daddy delivered her to William, kissed her forehead, sat beside Mummy in the front pew. The vicar began the ceremony. His words about love and faithfulness sounded like mockery. Love that knows no bounds. Faithfulness that lasts a lifetime. Every word was a dagger to my heart, but I remained calm, waiting for my moment. The rings were exchanged, William's hands shaking slightly as he slid the band onto Emma's finger. The same ring he'd given me, just in a different size. They'd even used the same jeweler, Gerard on Albemarle Street. The symmetry was ghastly. Then came the moment. The vicar spoke those famous words. If anyone knows of any lawful impediment why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. The silence in the cathedral was deafening. This was my cue. I stood, my movement causing several heads to turn. Emma froze. William went pale. I walked slowly towards the altar, my heels clicking on the stone floor, the only sound in the silent cathedral. When I reached them, I positioned myself directly before my sister. "You stole my husband," I whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but that wasn't all. I took a deep breath, turned to face the congregation. My sister began her affair with my then husband 6 months before our divorce. They both betrayed me, lied to me, stabbed me in the back. Murmurs rose throughout the cathedral. Mummy covered her mouth with her gloved hand. Daddy lowered his head. Emma began to sway. William tried to steady her. I wasn't finished. I turned back to Emma. "But do you know what? I forgive you. I forgive you both. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to be free. Free from anger, free from pain, free from you. I wish you the marriage you deserve. A marriage built on lies and betrayal. May it bring you the happiness you stole from me." At that moment, Emma collapsed. Her knees buckled, the white dress pooling on the floor like spilt milk. William caught her before she hit the ground completely. Gasps echoed through the cathedral. Mummy rushed forward. The vicar called for water. Chaos erupted. I remained calm, watching the scene unfold. Emma was slowly coming round. They sat her on a chair. Her makeup was smeared, her elaborate updo destroyed. She looked at me, and in that moment, I saw the little girl she'd once been. The little girl who'd crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. "Charlotte, please," she whispered. "I'm so terribly sorry. I didn't mean for it to happen. It just did." I fought against it, but I couldn't help myself. I love him. I love him desperately. Her words were sincere. I could feel it, but sincerity couldn't undo what had been done. William stepped forward, his face a mask of anger and shame. "You have no right, Charlotte. Our marriage was over long before Emma and I. You were married to your work, not to me. You never truly saw me, never truly loved me. His words stung, but I didn't show it. Perhaps he was right, perhaps not. It no longer mattered. What mattered was that I'd finally spoken the truth. The burden I'd carried for 2 years had lifted from my shoulders. The vicar attempted to salvage the situation, suggested postponing the ceremony, but Emma stood, wiped her tears with a handkerchief. "No," she said with surprising firmness. "We shall continue. Charlotte has said what she needed to say. Now it's time to move forward." She took William's hand, repositioned herself before the altar. The guests sat down hesitantly, the tension palpable. The vicar continued, his voice uncertain. When he reached the kiss, the entire cathedral held its breath. The kiss was brief, almost shy. Not a moment of triumph, but a cautious step into an uncertain future. As they turned to leave the cathedral, Emma stopped before me. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for telling the truth. And thank you for forgiving me, even though I don't deserve it. You'll always be my sister, Charlotte. Always." I merely nodded, unable to speak. They continued, arm in arm, through the confused gathering of guests. I remained until the cathedral was nearly empty. Only Olivia waited for me, seated in one of the back pews. We left the cathedral together, stepping out into the London sunshine that had broken through the clouds. The air was fresh after the morning rain, smelled of new beginnings. We went to the Ivy, sat outside, ordered 2 glasses of champagne. "You were incredibly brave," Olivia said, "or incredibly mad. I'm not quite certain which." We both laughed, the first genuine laugh in months. It was liberating. The weeks following the wedding were strangely quiet. Emma sent photos from their honeymoon in the Lake District, the same place William and I had honeymooned. I deleted them without looking. Mummy rang daily, wanting to reconcile the family. I needed time, I told her. A month later, I received a letter. Emma's handwriting, which I knew by heart from years of past notes. She wrote of her guilt, her shame, but also of her love for William. She wrote of our childhood memories, our unbreakable bond as sisters. At the end of the letter, an ultrasound image. She was pregnant. I sat for ages, staring at that blurry image. A new life, innocent of all this drama. A child who would be my niece or nephew, regardless of what stood between us. I understood then that forgiveness wasn't a single act, but a process. A long, painful process. I rang Emma. Her voice was thin, anxious when she answered. "Congratulations," I said. The child was the first step. We met a week later in Hyde Park, walked for hours around the Serpentine. It wasn't like before, would never be like before, but it was a beginning. William and I spoke 2 months later in a neutral cafe near Liverpool Street. He apologized genuinely this time. He spoke of his confusion, his fear of the routine in our marriage, his unexpected feelings for Emma. I listened without anger, without bitterness. Time had softened the sharp edges of my pain. A year after the wedding, their daughter was born, Alice Margaret Thornton. They asked me to be godmother. I was surprised, overwhelmed, touched. At the christening back at St. Paul's, I held the tiny girl in my arms. She had Emma's eyes and William's smile. In that moment, I felt the last remnant of my anger dissolve. Years passed. I got to know James better, the patient colleague who'd never given up. Our friendship became something more, slowly, carefully. He knew my story, accepted my scars. We married at Chelsea Registry Office, just close family and friends. Emma was there, pregnant with their second child. She wasn't my maid of honor. That would have been too much. But she was there. Today, 5 years after that dramatic wedding, we're all gathered in my parents' garden in Chelsea. Alice plays with my son Oliver, born 2 years ago. Emma and I watch them, sipping Pimm's, discussing ordinary things. The past isn't forgotten, never will be, but it no longer defines us. Sometimes, when I see Emma and William together, I still feel a small twinge, but it's not pain anymore, rather the memory of pain, a scar that aches when the weather changes. They're happy in their way. I'm happy in mine. Perhaps everything had to happen exactly as it did. Family is complicated. Love is complicated. Forgiveness is the most complicated of all. But in the end, we're all just humans trying to find our way. Emma is still my sister. The bond between us was stretched to breaking point, but it didn't break. It's different now, more careful, more conscious, but it's there. The truth I spoke that day in the cathedral changed everything. Emma's fainting was the moment the facade fell. After that, we could only be honest with each other. It was painful, chaotic, but necessary. Sometimes one must destroy everything to rebuild. My name is now Charlotte Harrison. James's surname, a new chapter. But I'm still the woman who stood up that May Day in St. Paul's to speak the truth. That act doesn't define me, but it's part of my story. A story of betrayal and forgiveness, of pain and healing, of the complicated love between sisters. When Oliver is older, I'll tell him this story, not to sow discord, but to show him that family means weathering even the fiercest storms, that forgiveness is possible, even when it seems impossible, that the truth, however painful, ultimately sets one free. The sun sets over London, bathing the garden in golden light. The children laugh, our parents smile, Emma and I toast. To family, she says. To truth, I reply. To the future, we say together. And in that moment, everything is well. Not perfect, but well. And that's quite enough. So what do you think? Have you ever experienced such a betrayal? How would you have reacted in my position? Do let me know in the comments below. And if this story touched your heart, please subscribe to my channel for more true stories from life. Every story is unique, but in each one, we find a piece of ourselves. Until next time, you're Charlotte.